In today's Jurassic Architect video, let's build this together. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the first Jurassic Architect video for Jurassic World Evolution 3. Some of you might remember I used to do this for Evolution 2 to go over some interesting ways you can build in your parks. Well, today, and for the first video, I thought we would tackle something in modular building that's relatively simple to introduce you all to the concept. And what we're choosing to build is this, the Jurassic Park Operation Genesis fountain. It's a relatively simple structure, so I think it would make for a good first video. So having a look at the fountain, you can see that it's a simple tile base, then you've got a central core, 4 statue heads around a circular fountain. We're not going to worry about the little light poles around the outside, we're just going to focus on the main bit in the middle. So, we're going to tackle this and I'm going to build it for you step by step so that you can follow along and see how I would go around constructing something like this. So, welcome to a flat tropical map. This is where I build all of my modular building builds. And to begin with, we're going to lay out what it is we're actually going to need to construct this building. So let's have a look at all the bits we're going to use. So here are all the pieces that I think we're going to need to make the fountain. We have the tiled base, which I've put some soil in the middle so that we can do some planting around the outside. And you can see I've turned the red tiles to sort of coloration of the white that we have in the original game. Then we have the fountain piece itself, a circular top. This fountain piece is the only one really that works for this sort of thing, I think. Then we have these pre-placeable plaster pieces. These aren't the grid-based ones, these are the non-grid ones, which should give us some flexibility for creating the core of the fountain. What's good about the non-gridded pieces is you can change the scale, which is going to be very important. And then we have 2 different possibilities for statues to replace the Parasaurolophus head, because we don't have a Parasaurolophus head, obviously. So we've got a T-Rex head and an egg statue. Now, I don't think we can get it looking absolutely 100% identical to the JPOG fountain, but we're going to try and get it looking reasonably close. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually place down a door. And there's a good reason for this. The original fountain stands about twice the height of an individual, and the average door is about 6 foot tall. So you can use doors to gauge scale. So twice the height of a door is about here. So the top of the fountain is going to be about that high. And we're going to get that fountain over. We should just be able to move it over and then we can attach it to the group. So we want the fountain to be roughly in the middle of this area. And then we want it to be about twice as tall. So that's about there. And if we get these and move them across, yeah, so it's just above the height. So that's fine. We're actually going to group these together. We're going to group this together, and now we're going to build from the top downwards. Normally, I would suggest you build from the ground upwards, but I think in this case, because this is we want to make sure we're getting it correct, we're going to build from the top down. Now, the original JPOG fountain has quite a narrow hourglass sort of shape to it, but I'm going to try something. Well, I'm going to try and replicate that, but also do something a little bit different. So these placeable plaster pieces, these are available in walls, and we're gonna search for plaster because it's easier than scrolling down the menu. And we want this one, the straight wall plaster. This is non-gridded, so you see we can place it down, rotate it off grid, change the color, and we can also change the size. That's going to be the important bit. Now, what I want to do with this is create a rough octagonal shape. This is going to form the basis of the surround that's going to go around the fountain. We're making it out of the plaster because I think the plaster does the best job of replicating sandstone. Concrete just doesn't look right. Now we're going to use the advanced move to bring it up to the level of the fountain, and we want to make sure it's relatively in the middle. Now you see that's a little bit big, so what I'm going to do is just shrink it down using the scale, and that I would say, actually I'm going to match it to the line on the actual fountain itself. That I would say is perfect. Now we're going to duplicate that piece, and we're going to shrink it again to create that tapered shape. Maybe just nudge it forwards a little bit more. There we go. And then we're going to... That's strange. Why is it... Why did that form all the way over there? Duplicate. Go down again. And then this one we're going to make slightly wider. Actually, we're going to leave it the same size. We're going to taper that down just again. And then this one we're going to make wider. And then this one we're going to make a lot wider. And we're going to just a little bit less wider. There we go. Again, it isn't perfect, but perfect replication is going to be pretty difficult on this game when we don't have all the pieces. But we've got the sort of relative shape going on here. If anything, I think actually this needs to be taller. So I'm actually going to make this another section up. I'm going to move this up a bit more. And then we're going to have another section come up. There we go. Just gives us a bit more room to play with. And we've got plenty of room around the base to do decorative work with. Now, adding the statue heads into here is going to be a little tricky. They should be on the north, east, south, and west formations, but we don't really have anywhere to stick them here. Now, there are larger sort of column pieces towards the base at each of the diagonals. But I'm wondering, what if we actually use the columns? Now, we don't have very good selections for plaster columns. They're literally just flat, which is not particularly good. What I'm going to do is take each one, and we're going to use the angle selection, and we're going to angle these to 15 degrees. And then each one we are going to slide in there, and we're going to move it up just a smidge. And that gives us a flattish base to have any of our statues. I actually think I might nudge it out one more. That might be a bit much. Actually, I don't dislike that, but it is a bit much. So I'm actually going to do it manually. I don't normally do this. But what I want is it to look like, yeah, that's what I want to do. You can see you've got the outline just connecting up here and connecting down there. I don't mind that there's a little gap. I actually quite like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this, move it, turn the movement controls to 45 degrees, and we're going to shift it. And we'll do the same thing here. So we want it to be in the middle. That gives us something to put our statues on. I actually think I want to move the fountain up a little bit. That might be too much. I want to do something else with the fountain. Maybe put something in the middle. We'll come back to that in a minute. Now, like I say, we've got a sort of column-like piece. Now, I could use plaster again, but I'm not going to do that because I want to add a little bit of different color into here and texture. So I'm going to use the Jurassic Park style concrete columns. These are all resizable. But what I'm going to do is just shift some of these wide ones. And again, I want it sort of slightly angular. Now, in the original, there's actually quite a lip there, so I'm going to have it, and they come up just below here, really. Because if you imagine these plaster column pieces sticking out, they're the curve of the neck of the Parasaurolophus that we see in the actual original. Actually, I don't like that one. I want one to be a little thicker than that. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Now remember, all these column pieces, you can resize them. So don't be afraid to use resizing to just get it looking the way that you want it to. I want it to be a little bit above the plaster line just to give it some texture. And that is perfect. Right, we're going to... And again, we're going to go through the same process. Obviously, once you have two in position, you can copy them both and do them both at the same time. As a matter of course, I just kind of prefer to do everything one at a time because sometimes pieces are not quite lining up properly. And if you do it one at a time, you don't have to go around and fix multiple. You can fix the one that's not correct and move on to the next. But that's just the way I prefer to do things. I don't mind some of the edging to these plaster. Well, actually, I do. Let's just try and get some of the edges looking a little neater. But I actually don't like it when things look completely 100% without flaw. I actually think if you make a park without flaws, it looks kind of fake. Having an occasional line show up just adds a bit of texture, I feel, to the build. Let's grab these three. I think they could all do with being shifted slightly. That's better. That's acceptable. No huge gaps, just some slight gaps. So these concrete posts will be where they're just decorative features. We'll leave them grey, actually, so that we can just have that little part of Jurassic Park going on. So next thing to do is to put on the egg/T-Rex skulls. We'll see how both of them look. Like I said, there are two different replacements for the Parasaurolophus skull I've been thinking about. The T-Rex skull, which is lovely, and the egg statue. I think the egg statue is very on par, considering breeding mechanics is one of those big things. So what I might do is actually create two different versions of this fountain. Now, these are going to be awkward to place because they're not perfectly shaped. Let's see what it's like if we rotate it by 15 degrees. I actually don't dislike that. I think that's pretty decent. It does look like it's part of the overall structure. I wish we could change the color of them, but they do kind of cut. They are the same sort of size of the Parasaurolophus skull. So, I mean, here's a thought. Maybe we could just replace the Parasaurolophus neck with actual neck bones. Maybe? We don't have one that really is the right sort of swan neck. If we had like a swan neck sort of shape, that would be best. I actually think that's fine as is. Let's see how it looks if we put one on each side, because that's the... Ooh, what has happened there? That is what happens... No, let's try that again. That is what happens when I think you're on global rotation as opposed to... No, on local rotation as opposed to global. Global rotation is the same wherever you are on the map. That's what you should be building in. It's just very useful. Remember, as you duplicate, it automatically creates one when you hit the left mouse button. I think my left mouse button is actually dying on me. It's all those War Thunder games I've played. So there it is with the T-Rex skulls. I don't think that's too bad. I think it's a decent facsimile for the Parasaurolophus heads, to be honest. And we can put lighting inside of the skulls just to make them look even better. What I'm actually going to do is we're actually going to save this one. This is JPOG fountain with Rex skulls. So we should be able to place that whenever we like. Yep. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to edit this one. Get rid of those Rex skulls, and we'll put the eggs in instead. And so we'll have two, essentially. We'll have one with the Rex skulls and one with the eggs. Now, the egg statues are actually quite small. So I think we actually might want to make them bigger. I reckon a full 1.8 bigger. What we want to do is again get the right amount of angling going on. Now one of the problems we have with these eggs is that they're offset. Like, to get the opening of the egg, you have to have it at a diagonal, which is a bit annoying. And hiding that tile is not going to be easy. We would have to have the eggs so small. We'll keep the size to the 1.6. And we'll just make use of that. I think I need to adjust the angling slightly. Yeah, there we go. And we'll make use of the little base on there just to make it stick out a little bit more. Again, I don't dislike that. Can we change the color of this? We can alter the colors. So when it comes to finally matching the statue's colors to JPOG's colors, we can do something with that. So it's all just about It's all just about working within the systems we have. And that's something I would suggest as a general tip. Like, the fountain in JPOG is a circle. It is not a hexagonal shape. But we don't have circular plaster pieces. And while you could attempt to build something circular with those straight plaster pieces, it would be a bit of a nightmare to do that. So I think it's better to work within the limitations of the system that we have, find a way to make something look the way you want it without compromising on how many pieces you're putting down or how long it's taking you to build the thing. Fundamentally, it doesn't have to be identical. None of my JPOG buildings that I've built so far are 100% identical, just because it is not possible to get them looking 100% identical. We just don't have the pieces. But as long as you look at it and go, oh, well, that's definitely a building inspired by JPOG, that's sufficient for me. Now, I think, yeah, the egg one is acceptable enough. So again, what I'm going to do here is we're going to make this a blueprint. We're going to create this as new, and this is going to be JPOG fountain with eggs. I always advise that you create modular building saves while you are working. Never, ever build without saving, because if you suffer a game crash or your computer crashes or anything like that, you could lose hours of work. Time for us to start matching up colors, and I think it's probably best to do this before we tackle designing, putting in the foliage around the base. We want to make it easier to grab stuff. Now, if we go based on the JPOG colors, the top of the fountain is a darker sandstone to the rest of the fountain. So we're going to color all these pieces in the same color. Now, I don't think that's an especially nice brown. The sandstone color is more of an orangey brown. Something... I would say something almost close to that. That's almost too light. We want it a bit darker than that. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. What's this grey line here? Ah, it decides the colour inside the fountain. I actually quite like colouring that. Let's see what colours we've got going on here. Ooh, that's quite gory. I actually really enjoy changing the colours of this around. I mean, you could have different coloured fountains with different coloured. I can't. That looks so ghastly. Let's just have it in white. Actually, I think white is a very neutral colour. And this is the line that goes around the middle. We'll also have that in black, just to shadow that gap. The rest of this, I would always suggest that when you're doing colouring, you colour everything at the same time. So especially if you're picking a colour that is not on this colour chart, because these 5 recent colours, they disappear quite fast. So we were that sort of colour, and we were making it a bit more orange. I think that's potentially a tad bright. I am satisfied with that colour, yes. What's going on there? Good. What's going on here? Sometimes you might get a little bit of Z fighting. The only way you can really deal with that is to just move things about. Yeah, I think that's a good sandstone-y colour. Now the rest of this is also the same. But I'm not going to do that because I want some difference in color going on here. So the actual base of this, I'm going to color gray. And then these pieces can also be the sandstone, the base sandstone that we have around the edge there. And then the T-Rex holding pillars. I'm actually going to make those this brown color. So actually I'm going to have to go into here and get this brown color. We're going to copy that with Control and C. If you don't know what Control and C does, it's the Windows short key for copy. We're going to select those. We're going to go here. We're going to drag our mouse here. We're going to Control V, which copies it. You can see there's the hex code. Click accept. And there you go. Yeah, I think that's reasonably matching the colors there. I think the more colors you can have on a particular construction, the better it looks. That's why I'm not painting the whole thing in the same sandstone color. In JPOG, obviously, the designs were very, very simple. But this is, again, not going to be a direct copy. This is something I want to be a homage to that fountain. Now, the egg statues are going to be the interesting bit. Can we make them the same colors? We can. I actually quite like that, matching the sandstone of the rest of the fountain. I think that's pretty good. We can't actually change the color of the Rex skull, which is fine. It is what it is. So next up is to put the plants in at the very base. Now this should be the tricky bit. We don't have huge amounts of room, so we're going to have to pick relatively small bushes. Now there are some which I absolutely live by. These wattle bushes are really, really good. They come in straight, well, a number of different varieties basically, but they are absolutely perfect for ground cover. Now we want something to represent those ferns that they have in the original. Now, I'm just going to have a look here. What sort of ferns do we have? No, that's not a fern. That is not a fern. Maybe I should just search for fern. Okay, that's definitely the sort of one that they used in the JPOG version, but that's just not going to be useful. I think actually we might want to make use of one of these ones, to be honest. Quite a small bushy one. I quite like that. We put it down into the ground just a bit. Remember, with all of the foliage in the game, you can shrink it into the ground and you can also scale it. Yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. We've got a little bit of empty soil space there, though. So what I'm going to do is place down something with a bit of color to it. Let's go for... I do like using the lavender. It's not lavender, it's alpine phacelia, but I call it lavender even though it isn't. Just adds a little bit of color, and it comes in some very useful shapes. You'll see this purple flower in a lot of my designs. I think that's pretty fine there. I mean, actually thinking about it, maybe these ferns ought to be a little bit lower into the ground. I want to be able to see a little bit more of the fountain. That's better. Yeah, because in the original it looks like the fern's leaves come up to about where the columns are, and you can see that's the top of the column. but I also want the tops of the columns to be a little exposed so we can put lighting down here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go and do the same thing to the egg fountain briefly, and then we'll be back to deal with lighting. So here they are. They're both ready, foliage placed in, and now it comes to the final thing that I always do with my builds, and that is we tackle the lighting last. Now, obviously to do this, you want to make sure that your park is in the dark. This gives you the opportunity to see where you actually want the lighting to go. Now, with both of these fountains, we want the lighting to be relatively similar so that we can kind of match them. But there are some differences that I want to do. Now, the first thing I want to do is put some lights in these Rex heads. Now, it's going to be tricky. There works quite nicely. What is the alternative, though? Because I don't actually think that's particularly interesting. We do have some torches, I believe, don't we? Let's have a look. How do they look? So we could go with the torches. These would be harder to place in. There we go. We've got one aligned to surface there. Such a useful tool to have. Oh, I think that's quite good. Okay. That's our lighting source then for around these Rex skulls. Going to do the same thing. Going to align to surface, make sure it's in the middle, make sure it's, where is it? About equal to that big chunk of bone that divides the eye socket from the ear hole in the skull. That'll do. There's some contrast through the darkness. See, I wouldn't put a light here, for example, because the lighting actually being created by those 4 torches is actually surprisingly powerful. You know, I actually think that's fine without any lighting in the actual fountain. I think what we'll actually do is we'll put lighting at the base down here. So I'm not going to put anything on these columns. I've decided. I think that would ruin the effect of the torches. So we're actually just going to put some relatively small lights in each corner. Not an excessive amount of lighting, but I think that looks really good. Now over to this guy. This guy is going to be a little trickier because we don't have space, I don't think, for the torches to go in. Let's see how small we could shrink them down. Maybe a little bigger. See, that's the problem there. Whoops. It's sticking out the floor of the... Okay, so that's... You know, that actually also does kind of work. There we go, that illuminates the eggs quite nicely. And then we're going to basically just do the same thing as we did with the Rex statue. We're just going to... Just going to slide one into each corner. And that deals with the lighting quite nicely around each one of them, I think. Now, obviously, these are positioned on tile plinths. So you'll want to, when you're using them in your parks, you'll want to reduce them down into the ground somewhat. Or you can use them in other buildings, but there we go. I think they look rather nifty. And actually, I've had an idea for another one that I want to a slightly different variation on this that I want to create, which I'll show you in a second. So here we have the two fountains that we created. I just made sure that the blueprints were working so we could rebuild them. And let's show them in the dark, because I think then you'll get a nice appreciation for them. Look at that. And here are the two I've just gone and edited slightly. So those of us who remember Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, we know that there was a hidden decoration that was cut called the fire fountain. It was basically the standard fountain, but it had a big fire spout instead of a water spout. So I've gone away and recreated the fire fountain as well. Just used the Jurassic Park torches there, placed some Zen sand in the middle of the fountains, and created the fire fountains. So we have 4 fountains here for essentially the price of 1. And obviously from this you could then go and remove the Rex skulls and replace them with Spinosaurus skulls or the Diplodocus skulls. You could replace all of the vegetation. You could add different colors to the Zen sand and the fountain water for specific themes. You could replace the egg statues with signage or anything like that. These fountains are going to be quite versatile because you could use them and redesign them for your whims. You could even change what's on top of the fountain. So instead of having a water fountain or a fire fountain, you could just have a nice tree and you could use this as a planter. I mean, let's just quickly show you what that might look like. So let's just get rid of these. And then you could go into foliage and let's grab a really nice tree. Maybe something like that. No, maybe something like that. No. How about something like that? You could grab a really nice tree. And then you could use this as the base of a planter. Maybe not that one. That's perhaps a little too large. That one would be perfect if it didn't have such a massive root column. And we could use it for a... You could use it for a nice palm, for example. What other things could you put in here? Maybe let's have a look in the prop section. What have we got going on here? You could always change the type of fountain that you had in the middle, so you could replace it with a different type of fountain, maybe something like that. Although that wouldn't fit particularly well at that size. I mean, if you made the fountain smaller, you could change the fountain. I don't think any of the other fountain pieces are small enough. Oh, actually, these ones might fit as well. What about this round one? That one, not fitting, that one. You could add the Las Vegas style blasters to it to get a very tall fountain. Same with these. I mean, I wouldn't suggest anyone go near them because they'll be forever moist, but you could do something like that or something like that. No, there's a lot of possibilities with these fountains. You could even, I suppose, use them as placements for, say, columns or pedestals and put things on the columns or the pedestals. You could use them for signage. What have we got in signs? I mean, if you mounted it on its side, you could put the Jurassic Park sign in there. Or you could put the DIN sign up on there. Maybe you could use it for one of the classic signs. Is it big enough to put one of these modern art sculptures on? Just about. You could put the Dunkley one on there quite nicely. The Rex one wouldn't fit. What about the DNA fountain? The DNA shape you could definitely get on there. And that might look especially good if you had it in the fountain itself, or perhaps have it around the base of the fire fountain. There's a lot of versatility to a very simple decoration like this, is what I'm saying. But I think these 4 designs, let me just get rid of that one. And we'll recreate. They need to sort this problem out. Like, none of your blueprints show up after a while. Fire fountain with the eggs. There we go. But I think these 4 fountains look absolutely wonderful. Now they'll be placed on the workshop, so if anyone would like to have these fountains for themselves, they'll be available to download. But I really would suggest that all of you who maybe are new to building, or maybe not as confident with modular building, actually attempt to build one of these yourselves. They're relatively simple. It's 5 tiles. It's a 5 tiles square, so you get 9 tiles in the center. And have a go recreating what I've just done. Using the advanced movement controls, the angling controls, the duplication controls. Have a go actually recreating it. And I would be really interested to see if you guys have recreated or designed your own fountains based off this design. Why don't you join the Discord and show me some of your work? I would love to be able to show off people's work, because soon enough I'm going to be doing some workshop, a bit like what Evo is doing, showing off really great builds that she likes. I want to do something similar. I think me and Evo have very different styles of what we like and don't like, so I think it would be interesting to compare them. But I really want to see what people could do with just a very simple, versatile fountain arrangement like this. If you liked what I did here, and if you want to see more Jurassic Architect videos where I build modular things along with you guys, do let me know down in the comment section down below. And if you have any ideas of other things I should try to build, also include those. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all the usual YouTuber stuff, for more content from all of us at Tripod Gaming. And I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, and goodbye.